So hello and welcome back to Go Again Gaming. My name is Az, and today we're going to be looking at 4 things that I think Flesh and Blood will sort of be adopting from other games in the future. So I imagine they're taking a lot of inspiration from other games, and a lot of us have come over to Flesh and Blood from Magic the Gathering, Pokemon board games, other TCGs. I imagine we've found it through the love of other games. So I imagine that they're going to be taking more and more aspects of other games that people enjoy and putting their own spin on it, and obviously putting their own Flesh and Blood theme over the top of it. So this is 4 things I think will come into the game fairly soon, and yeah, I'm going to obviously be discussing loads of different things with regards to this game and speculations and things that may happen or may not happen. But these are 4 things that I've thought of, and expect to see more videos like this in the future. So the first thing that I think will be expanded upon, and we've already seen aspects of this, is dual classes. So at the moment you select a hero in the game of Flesh and Blood, whether that's a brute, whether that's a guardian, a warrior, a ninja, a mechanologist, a rune blade, whatever you choose to... whatever hero you choose to be has a class that comes with that hero, and you can only use cards from that hero's class or generic cards that come in the main sets. So with Monarch, with the release of Monarch, again, I'm yet to go into that because I'm still building up my knowledge of the game. But in Monarch, we have seen the Shadow and Light cards come to fruition, which obviously dictates the battle between Light and Shadow. But we've also seen Shadow Brute and Light Warrior. So Light Warrior is Boltin, and the Shadow Brute is Levia or Levia. So this is already alluding to the fact that we can expect to see, I imagine, more dual classes as time goes on. Whether that is just a supplementary class for that set, like Monarch, obviously you have the Shadow and the Light. Maybe there's a elemental set later on where you get fire, ice, earth and thunder, for instance, and then that combines with maybe fire warrior or fire or ice guardian or something along those lines. But I think dual classes is a good way to go because it gives your hero more of a unique identity, more sort of cards that you can use in the deck, and trying to find new ways to sort of mix and match to get the best of both classes. So I think, yeah, dual classes I think is something that's going to hit Flesh and Blood soon, and I'm all for that because I want to see, you know, warrior guardians or, you know, ninja brutes. You know, it'll be hilarious to see. Whether it'll work or not, I don't know, but again, they have in theory done that already with the Light and the Shadow, and then having a Shadow Brute or a Light Warrior. So again, I think it will happen going forward. I don't know whether we'll see dual classes like Warrior Guardian, Ninja Brute and stuff like that, but I do think that in supplementary, well, not supplementary, but main releases, we will see sort of crossovers depending on what that sort of set story is telling. With the Light and the Shadow, maybe there's an elementalist one. But yeah, I do think we'll see it in the main sets like dual classes, but I'd love to see it just in general having more and more stuff as time goes on. But that's the good thing about working with class-based and hero-based decks and limiting it to class, is that you can experiment with all of these sort of mixed things as time goes on. So yeah, I think dual classes we will see in the future, and we have already sort of seen a hint into that. So in Monarch, so yeah, that's one thing I think we'll see in the future. The second thing I would like to see in the future is a mechanic that's based on a Magic the Gathering mechanic, and that is milling cards. So those who are familiar with Magic the Gathering gameplay, milling is basically a way where you try and win the game by making sure that your opponents have no cards left in their deck, basically. That's the easiest way to explain it from a Flesh and Blood perspective, is that you want to be milling their cards away. You want to be dealing damage in the form of getting rid of the cards from their deck, so you're wearing their character down over time. And I think this is a great sort of flavour win as well, because again, Flesh and Blood is very much based on excuse me, the 1v1 aspect of the game. So it's you versus your opponent, and if your character or your class has the ability to deal damage in the form of cards, I think that's going to be a class that people can get behind in this game, because you're dealing damage in the form of cards. So I imagine that this would work well as like a rogue class, or maybe an assassin class, or some sort of shadowy thief sort of class, or something that steals from your opponents potentially, or some sort of agile class, maybe a ninja variant where it cares about just sort of prolonging the game as much as you can and getting rid of the opponent's cards rather than their life, and then just sort of death by 1,000 cuts style, because Ninja at the moment is very much comboing out with different sort of named cards. So maybe this is another way that Ninja could play potentially, or rogues or assassins or thieves, which cares about sort of damaging your opponents, like little 1 damages here and there, but then also milling the cards into their graveyard off the top of their deck. So I think, because obviously this game is so, it cares about, obviously your whole deck is a resource in this game. You don't have to have resource cards in there like your energy cards from Pokemon or your magic lands. Your deck basically fuels your deck, you know. So every card that you can get rid of into the graveyard is pretty good. You know, trading damage for cards in this game could be quite valuable. So I think milling cards, or whatever mechanic they choose to maybe model it on, could be a good way, or a good mechanic to have in this game, because you do care about the cards in your deck, and seeing those cards and those actions and everything else go into your graveyard will be a really, really big feel bad. So I think that could be quite a good mechanic in this game, is dealing damage, and a strategy where you care about putting your opponent's deck into the bin, basically, into the form of the graveyard. So I don't know what they could call it, but again, the theme is there. It cares about wearing your opponents down after times. Maybe it could be like a grind down mechanic, or sort of outlast, or something like that, where it cares about just getting rid of your opponent's deck and then just killing them when they're their weakest, when they've got no actions left to use, just executing them there and then, stalking them like an assassin, like a rogue, until they're just ready to give in. So yeah, I think that could be a good a good thing to include, is dealing damage, or some sort of mechanic that cares about discarding cards into the graveyard from the deck itself. The next thing I think will probably be introduced into the game, it could be for good or ill, depending on how it's done, is the addition of sort of permanent cards and abilities. And we've seen this already in the game with like auras, and I think there's been some other cards. Again, I haven't really looked into that much of the new stuff just yet. I'm only just getting past the intro characters from the game, so I could be speaking about stuff that already exists. But I do know auras exist, and I think I've seen there's allies and other stuff as well in this new set, and obviously mentors as well in Monarch. But essentially, I can see this game bringing out more and more sort of permanent static effect cards that will stay in play, and just sort of plague the opponent if you don't get rid of them. So it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. Again, like, you know, another Magic the Gathering sort of reference here is Planeswalkers. Obviously, Planeswalkers were released in Magic the Gathering, and this, I think, is similar to how Mentors work. They have like an ability that you put counters on them, and they go and do stuff once they've sort of reached their counter quota, per se. So I think permanent cards are going to come into play a lot more. But again, it could be more to do with the set that's released, rather than it becoming a game where you do summon allies all the time, or you do have creatures under your control, or enchantments or locations under your control. I know there's a new location card, like a landmark, I think, for the light characters in Monarch. So I think a lot more permanent cards are going to be coming out in Flesh and Blood. But again, I don't know whether that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, Flesh and Blood is very much, you know, the one-on-one combat, the mind games between you and the opponent. So if you start adding extra allies that you summon into the mix, I think it's going to be a bit sort of off flavour. I mean, it'd be interesting to see, when I get my hands on some Monarch, when I start playing some actual games. I think it's going to be interesting to find out whether these things can impact the game in that negative way. But we will see. I very much like the fact that your deck is just a deck full of resources and action cards that you use to pummel the face of your opponent in different ways. So adding more and more sort of moving cogs, more and more creatures and allies that you can target instead of your opponent, I think will just be a bit of a flavour fail, but we will see. It could be good, it could be bad, so it's going to be interesting to see. But I do think that they will add more permanent cards as time goes on, and static effects and all that sort of thing, because it's a space that card games can explore. Is having another sort of target out there instead of your actual opponent. You can damage your opponent's creature or your opponent's ally or your opponent's location card. So it does add a little bit of layering to the game, but we don't want to add too much where it just becomes an army versus army situation. It's very much still one-on-one combat, this game. So yeah, going to be interesting to see how they implement that, because they will 100%. Mentors have come out in the Blitz decks. I think it's going to be something that's going to be expanded on. We will see. And it also adds as well the fact that obviously there's mentor cards and potentially big permanent cards. It does add that chase rare feel to the game as well. And if you open like a mentor, I know the mentors are only in the Blitz decks, but it gives people the option to purchase a Blitz deck for that one card. So it does start to sort of add in and force in chase rares if you start putting extra permanents in there, which can be quite OP, quite overpowered. So we will see. But permanents, I think, will come at some point, and they already have, I think, as well. So we'll see. And finally, I think that another thing that they're going to sort of implement going forward is streamlined multiplayer, or they're going to encourage the community to work on the multiplayer format, that is Ultimate Pit Fight. So I think they're going to encourage people to play around with that and come up with a more streamlined way of doing it. Because at the moment it does feel like it's a bit clunky, but it does feel like it's not really the focus of the game. And it shouldn't be, because Flesh and Blood is very much, again, that 1v1 feel. You against them, you're using your resources and your sort of play style to beat the opponent directly in front of you. I don't think multiplayer really sort of works in this game. I haven't really played it. I haven't played the game at all, to be honest. I'm just literally commentating on it and giving my thoughts on it. So when I start playing it, I guess we'll find out. But I just don't think, from what I've read, what I've seen, what I've experienced so far, that multiplayer is going to be a space that's going to do particularly well. So maybe more content creators, more people that are making content on this game will explore Ultimate Pit Fight and maybe try and make it a little bit more accessible. Because at the end of the day, the reason why Magic the Gathering, one of the reasons why Magic the Gathering has become so popular is because of Commander. Commander is a multiplayer format in Magic the Gathering where you choose a legendary creature from from Magic the Gathering's history, and you play with that character in a deck that's tailored towards their game style. So again, Flesh and Blood is very much basing themselves on that sort of premise, where you choose a hero from Flesh and Blood's lore and you pilot a deck that sort of synergizes with them. So I think that if they tried to expand on that multiplayer gameplay and have it work in a sort of kitchen table environment where I could just open up all of my... Because I'm going to get loads of products soon for Flesh and Blood, and I'm going to open it on this channel, which you'll see. But if I wanted to build some decks out of those cards that I've got and just hand them to my friends who are familiar with Magic the Gathering and Pokemon and what have you, and just sit around a kitchen table to play, I want to be able to play a game of Flesh and Blood that feels balanced, that feels good to play multiplayer. But at the moment, I think it is very much tailored on that 1v1 style gameplay. And as it should be, it was designed that way. And Magic the Gathering was also designed that way for 1v1 combat. But it just evolved into a kitchen table-esque commander-driven world. And it goes to show that they are very, very much focusing on that multiplayer game style now with Commander. So I think Flesh and Blood is going to try and adopt some of that because it wants to sort of influence the kitchen table space as well, the casual gaming space. I think it will want to hit, especially because their ethos is very much rooted in local game stores. So local game stores always have people coming to their tables and wanting to play games, and sometimes whole pods of friends want to play together. And Flesh and Blood, it does allow that with Ultimate Pit Fight, but I just don't know how that's gonna support the multiplayer game. We will see. There needs to be some content creators out there that create more Ultimate Pit Fight content, and I probably will do at some point when we can sort of all get together again around the table. It is imminent. So we will see it soon. I will definitely be doing Ultimate Pit Fight on this channel. I will very much be just making decks and giving them to my friends to play, and just hopefully getting them into the game as well. Yeah, we will see. But I think multiplayer is another aspect of this game that will evolve and change over time, and I think they do need to, and I think they will as well. I think they will put more attention into the multiplayer format because it does bring in a lot of players. Magic the Gathering players who played Commander or grew up playing 60 card decks on kitchen tables with their friends. They're the ones that now play Commander because it brings them back to the time where they were just playing for fun. So it's definitely a thing I think they will improve on in the future, and I think we will see content creators making their own sort of Ultimate Pit Fight rules and variants and what have you. And maybe we can get it to the stage where Ultimate Pit Fight becomes such a popular format that then decks are sort of released into that space, very much like Commander is with Magic the Gathering. So I think it's going to be an area that they do address eventually. But I think this sort of pick with regards to multiplayer, Streamline Multiplayer, is more of a wish rather than what I think they'll do. But I think they should do it, and I think they will do it. I think they will put some more sort of limelight on Ultimate Pit Fight. But maybe that needs to be done by the community, by us. So definitely reach out to me if you want to play some Ultimate Pit Fight, maybe online. We can do some stuff. So thank you very much for tuning in. This has been my 4 things that I think Flesh and Blood will adopt over the next couple of years. And there'll be more videos like this as and when I think of new things that they could sort of add or subtract from the game. But I'm very much still discovering it, very much enjoying talking about it, and thank you very much for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the little bell notification if you want to be notified of any future videos. But I have been Az, and we will see you on the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.